So, hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the webinar, 5 Ways Social Media Enriches the Doctor-Patient Relationship. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us this afternoon. So today our presenters are Heather Butts and Patricia Redsicker. My name is Heather Butts, and I'm a healthcare compliance and regulatory expert specializing in medical and research ethics. I also teach at Columbia University School of Public Health and St. John's University School of Law, and am the founder of Learn for Life Consulting. Also joining us today is Patricia.
Thank you, Heather. If you want to go ahead and turn the slide to the next one so that people can see our faces. My name is Patricia Redsicker. I am a content marketing and social media strategist. I specialize in digital content for the healthcare industry, and I'm also the founder and chief content officer at WordView Editing, a content marketing consultancy in Baltimore, Maryland. And we have there on the screen our Twitter handles. If you are going to be tweeting, and we encourage you to do so, we've also provided you with the hashtag for this event. It is hashtag tips, number 4, doctors. That's hashtag tips for doctors. Go ahead and live tweet using that particular hashtag. And on the next slide, Heather and I have prepared for you a ready-made tweet so that you can get started with that. I'm on the 5 Ways Social Media Enriches Doctor-Patient Relationships webinar with P. Redsicker and Learn for Life LLC, hashtag tips for doctors. So feel free to go ahead and tweet if you come across any piece of content that Heather and I will be discussing that you feel is valuable to communicate to your followers. Go ahead and tweet away. We'll be happy to see you doing that. So today's discussion is, Heather and I have been looking forward to this webinar for weeks. It's a great discussion and presentation that we have prepared for you, and there's much to learn. And one of the reasons why this is such an exciting webinar, an exciting conversation for Heather and I, and we certainly hope you feel the same way, is because healthcare is such an interesting space right now. There's a lot of bad things going on in the media, with the healthcare reform and how people are reacting to the political aspect of it. So there's a lot of things going on that people are not necessarily too happy about. But there is good news as well. There's some good stuff happening, and there are opportunities for things to get even better. And social media emerges as a platform that hopefully will start to get that, will start to get healthcare, the perception of healthcare on a better platform. So we're hoping to see social media, digital content, and all these different aspects of new media maybe hopefully resurrecting, rejuvenating the healthcare brand. So we have a lot to learn. Let's jump right on to it. And today we are going to discuss several things. We're going to discuss why patients search online for healthcare information. We're going to talk about how to use social media to communicate with your patients in a helpful and caring fashion. And towards the end of the webinar, we are also going to provide you with tips to get started with social media. So moving right along, we have been looking at some research as we prepared for this webinar. We came across some research which is very interesting, and we wanted to share that with you. And this research comes from a healthcare research firm called National Research, and they did a survey with about 23,000 consumers, and they discovered that 96% of those that they surveyed are using Facebook to gather information about healthcare, and that's a huge sample. And I personally believe that it is representative of the population as a whole. Going on, 28% of those consumers are using YouTube, again, to look for information about healthcare. And 22% of them are using Twitter. And as a result, we find that hospitals, healthcare providers, and private insurers as well are starting to see the benefits of social media to engage with their consumers. So social media is definitely something that's not going away. All of the industries across the board are adapting and embracing in some way or another. True that healthcare has been a little slow to embrace social media, but we're starting to see that changing, and we're going to see how and why it is so important to embrace this platform. Well, why do patients search? Why do patients search for healthcare information? Well, there's a couple of reasons why they do that. The first thing is that being sick is a scary deal. And the truth is, just like we mentioned before, the healthcare system is in a big mess, and being sick has become a very, very scary predicament for a lot of people. Some of them may not have a healthcare plan. Some of them are out of work. They don't know what to do. Some of them don't even have a family physician or a general practitioner that they can seek. So it's a scary time to be sick. And so when they're suffering or when they're in pain, where do they go for information? What do they do? Who do they turn to? And the most natural place for them to turn to these days is online, because patients are looking for information that will help them to solve their problems. They want to find out more about their disease, how they can cope, what are the treatment options. And so going online to look for this kind of information becomes critical. Unfortunately, when they get there, they find that a lot of the information that is given to them is very commercialized. It's either too brand-centered or it's just simply not helpful. There's too many ads from different pharmaceutical companies, etc. And this is off-putting. This is discouraging. They just want help, and they're looking for relevant information, and they don't want to be bombarded with all this, marketing messages. So it can be discouraging for them. And I think that it's fair to say that they really do deserve useful information. They really deserve the kind of information that can help them to learn more about their disease. And so it's upon us as healthcare marketers, you guys as healthcare providers, to really find a way to provide patients and consumers with the kind of information that will truly help them to solve their problems. So this webinar is about how social media helps to enrich the doctor-patient relationship, how we communicate better with our doctors, and what are the benefits that social media lends to the patient-doctor relationship. And the first thing that we found out is that social media helps to build trust. Now you might be saying, what do you mean? Of course patients trust us. They come to us when when their lives are at stake. No question. Patients are used to trusting doctors with their very lives. There's no question about that. But what they really want to do is to stay connected with you. They want to stay connected with you throughout the year, not just the 2 times a year that they come to see you for their checkup. They want to be able to talk to you and to know that you care about them and that you understand what they're going through, So it's important to remember that if you keep in mind that, being sick is a scary predicament, they want to be able to converse with you more than twice a year in order to just feel cared for. So building trust is something that becomes very important, and social media is very helpful. Well, how does social media help to build that trust? Well, let's look at several instances, several scenarios. One of them is out-of-office interactions. Well, what do I mean by that? Well, I mean that, again, we mentioned that some people are not able to see their doctors more than once or twice a year. Now, of course, if they have a threatening disease or a more serious case, they would need to come more often, even if they don't have healthcare plans. Probably some sort of government or state-sponsored help might be able to give them that opportunity. But think about how cool it would be if beyond that they're able to interact with you out of the office. You know, how much could be said between, and I'm not talking about specific diagnosis, that probably cannot be done on social media, but just, you know, think about that young mom with young children in the house, you know, and children are bound to get into trouble in so many ways. And she knows that you have a Facebook fan page, or that you write a blog, or that you have a Twitter account, and she's able to immediately reach out to you and ask you, hey doc, this is what's going on, what should I do, you know? And it's not so much that she's asking for, you know, a medical diagnosis, but more so just asking for general advice. And social media really helps. And you imagine that if you respond to this mother, how much you know, how much trust she has, because she knows that you care about her and that you're actually going out of your way to respond to her. So this is really important in building trust with your patients. Another area where social media helps, and I'm trying to move my cursor, Heather, maybe you could help me out. It's not allowing me to get to the next bullet point. Thank you very much. Thank you. Is that social media helps to deliver, you know, it helps to deliver friendly and digestible chunks of information, you know, and also targeted information. Because what happens when, let's back up a little bit, Heather, back to the slide. Thank you. What happens oftentimes is that when patients go online to search for information, you know, they start on Google. They might not know exactly what they're looking for. They might, you know, put into the search field some sort of, you know, hopefully some kind of relevant query or inquiry that they hope will bring the kind of results that they want. But what happens is that they are then overwhelmed with a whole mountain of information. Some of it is relevant, some of it is not. They have to wade through all of this information in order to figure out what it is that will help them. Well, what social media does, especially if you have, if you as a doctor has a page or a blog that addresses certain issues, certain ailments, certain conditions, instead of going into the internet to look for information anywhere, you know, not knowing exactly what they will find, they know that a doctor so-and-so usually writes a blog on diabetes, and they can come check out your blog and get all the relevant information they need in one place without having to search for hours for something that they may not even know, you know, what they're looking for. So that's really important, you know, the delivery of digestible chunks of information in a friendly environment. The other thing the other way in which social media helps to build trust is that it shows empathy on your part. You as a doctor, it shows empathy. Well, what do I mean by that? Well, you know, when you're on Facebook or on Twitter and you're responding to your patients' questions, you know, it really shows them that you sincerely care about them. It shows them that you are committed to helping them solve their problems. Because the fact is, and we're going to talk about this later, there is the perception that doctors are very inaccessible. It's hard to reach a doctor, and we're going to touch on that soon. So the fact that you make yourself available on social media and that you take care to answer your consumers and your patients' questions, it really shows a side of you that endears you to your patient. And that helps in the trust factor, that, you know, you have that empathy. Empathy is really important in social media, and if you can let empathy shine through, especially when you're dealing with hurting people, it's a really big deal. I know from my own point of view as a patient, I know how big a role empathy plays when it is communicated to me by my doctor. So this is really important. And then finally, we all know that social media is a very friendly space. It's an informal space. Everybody's there, from your grandmother to your grandchild. And so it's not an intimidating environment It's very unlike your office. When your patients come in, they only have 15 minutes, they have to do certain things, they have to fill certain forms. You know, it's just very formal and rigid, and there are certain steps and processes that need to be done before you actually sit down with them. But on a Facebook page, if you think about it, it's just a very relaxed environment. In any case, your patients are used to being there because they're talking to their friends all the time. So when they find you there and they're able to communicate with you in that space, you know, it allows them to see a behind-the-scenes approach to your practice. Ask the kind of questions that they may not be able to ask in your office where they feel a little bit more intimidated. So these are some of the ways where, you know, that social media can help to build trust in your patients. And again, if you're tweeting or if you find any of this content, something that you'd like to share with your followers, go ahead and tweet. The hashtag is right there below the image. It is hashtag tips4 doctors, DRS. Over to you, Heather.
All right, wonderful. So, number 2, empowers patients. If you want a better system, support smarter patients. And we're going to be dealing with issues about the savviness of patients on the internet. So, you know, today's patients are extremely smart. They're very savvy and they're very informed. And they do their research when they have some sort of medical condition or are sick, and they're very vocal. And before they even step into the doctor's office, they usually have done research about the physician, the healthcare system, the drugs that they're on or they might be prescribed, medical procedures, everything. So as a physician and as a medical practitioner, it's very important to be aware that patients know about you, they know about their diagnoses, and they're coming into your office armed with that information. So you have to be able to interact with them as opposed to be reactive. Better informed. So this means that patients expect a better quality of care. And because of rising healthcare costs, they insist about knowing the potential treatment options. So healthcare costs go up. Patients want to know what they're paying for, just like any other consumer would. By the time patients come to your office, they're also better prepared to ask questions. So your social media networks, such as they are, can help keep them better informed about you and your practice. Knowledge resources. So the internet and social media in particular also provide patients with even more knowledge resources and the opportunity to interact with other patients all around the world. And nowadays your patients are not just interacting with family members and friends and acquaintances, but they're interacting with people who they may never even seen before because they connect to them on the internet. Improved online interactions. So in decades past, physicians and healthcare professionals were the primary source of healthcare information. In the old sort of, system where doctor knew best and doctor knows best, patients took their cues from their physicians and they listened to them implicitly. But that's not the case anymore. Now, between online forums, including advice from peers and advice from strangers, in recent years, through social media, patients are using those tools in order to discuss their healthcare conditions, seek out information about diseases, treatment options, research options, experimental options, and often they're finding comfort due to their diseases through others, including through the treatment process. So as a physician, it's imperative that you're part of this process because patients are going outside of the physician-patient relationship to find the answers and the comfort that they sometimes feel that they may not be getting within that relationship. Now, Booz Allen is a global consulting firm that supports many industries, including healthcare. And recently they created a patient education documentary called Health IT, Advancing Care, Empowering Patients. This show features Dr. Bruce Hopper, a general practitioner and a social media pioneer. His approach to patient communication is a wonderful example of what we're talking about on this webinar. So rather than just seeing the patients in his office, he actually texts, sends messages, instant messages, video chats them as much as possible. He also communicates with them via Facebook and Twitter to share the latest links about health information and its relevancy to his patients. So by increasing his own availability and access on social media, many of his patients feel that their input is as important to the treatment plan as anything, and that they're actually a part of their own process and treatment plan, which creates for better autonomy and better empowerment for the patient and ultimately for the relationship between the patient and the doctor. If you'd like to see this documentary, you can grab the link below right here and take a look at it after the webinar. Back to you, Patricia.
Thank you. Another benefit of social media, ladies and gentlemen, is real-time communication. And we all know that because we tweet all the time and we tweet with our friends and our peers. But how does that apply in the healthcare arena? Well, a tweet in time actually does save lives. Believe it or not, it really does. And I'm going to show you a real case study where this happened. And this is a real case study that we picked up from i4pharma.com, where a certain gentleman whose name is Matthew Browning learned that his wife's grandmother was in serious trouble. She had a ruptured aorta and she needed the immediate attention of a surgeon. But where she lived was a really small community in southern Georgia, and she wasn't able to go to a hospital immediately for treatment. So her grandson-in-law, Matthew Browning, knew that Emory Health, which is a big hospital in Atlanta, that that they are advanced even in their patient communication strategies, and he sent an urgent tweet, and you can see it right there on your screen. And he sent that tweet to Emory Healthcare, that's their Twitter profile, saying that, basically, he needs help now because this is what's happening with his grandmother and she's going to die if she doesn't get help, and can you accept life flight? So apparently he knew that they do accept life flight and that this is a way that his grandmother-in-law could be saved. And don't you know that, of course, somebody on the other end was monitoring their tweets, and cut a long story short, they were able to organize a life flight to go over to her house, pick her up. Her life was saved, and everybody lived happily ever after. So look, tweeting, the way we see tweeting and social media, sometimes we minimize the importance or the effectiveness. But if hospitals such as Emory Health and even Mayo Clinic in Minnesota, MacArthur OBGYN, and so many others are starting to see the value of social media and tweeting and Facebooking and writing blogs, shouldn't we also maybe investigate how we can bring our practices on board and maybe start to see how this kind of communication might benefit our patients? So this is a good case study, and you can certainly feel free to Google it. I don't have a link for you, but you could just Google Emory Healthcare and social media and see some of the cool things that they're doing. Another area where social media impacts real-time communication, obviously, we've heard of this. We may not all be doing it, but operating room tweets. And that's where basically doctors are tweeting from the operating room, giving a step-by-step outline of the entire surgical procedure. And why is this important? You might be wondering, well, why would I want to do that as a doctor? Well, tell you what, if you have seen the faces of the families that are waiting outside in the patient room, in the waiting room, when you come out to deliver the news of how the particular procedure went and what outcome you expect to happen after that, you'll see a lot of anxiety on their faces. They're really concerned. Some of them have been sitting there for hours, haven't eaten anything, haven't gone home to relax, to comb their hair, to take a bath, nothing. They're just sitting there waiting to hear something, anything, And so these OR tweets very, very comforting for them, you know, because they help to make a process that is very daunting more digestible. It helps to help them know what's going on in there. And of course, you will need patient consent forms before this kind of communication can be transmitted, because Twitter is a public profile, and everything that you put out there it's possible that it can be viewed by the public. And so, of course, you need consent forms, but you know, it has been done, and I think we'll even look at an example later on of such a scenario. And so, you know, this is something that is really very useful. Another area that social media impacts real-time communication is drug recalls. And we all know that, you know, when the FDA recalls a certain medication, it might take some time before that information is communicated to the doctor and then the doctor to their patients. And so that time lag could be critical. Now imagine if you can tweet that information as quickly as possible to your followers, especially if you know that they're taking that particular medication, and you can tweet them and let them know that a certain drug has been taken off the shelves. How wonderful is that, and how that would impact the very lives of your patients, you know. And so this is something that is being done and can continue to be done successfully, and so that's something that you could look into as well. And finally, another case study, again with Booz Allen Hamilton, because they're obviously helping a lot of their healthcare clients to catch up on social media. So a lot of the case studies we have to do with Booz Allen Hamilton. And what they did recently is that they developed and launched a mobile site for Defense Centers of Excellence for Psychological Health. I think the URL for that is doe.org. And basically, this is a campaign which allows service members and veterans to connect with master's level health resource consultants at any time of the day or night. And so, you know, you imagine that many of these soldiers coming back from the war have gone through very traumatic experiences and the, you know, psychological issues that they're dealing with. And this campaign is helping them to connect with someone who can talk them through some of these issues and help them to deal with their problems. And this is a mobile site. So, you know, these veterans have 24/7 access to this resource consultant. They don't have to make an appointment to go to the hospital. They don't have to. Now, of course, I'm simplifying it a lot, and I'm sure there's, you know, there's a way that it's set up to make sure that the process is ethical, is legal. Of course, those things have to be taken care of. But the fact that after all that is said and done, that these servicemen and women have that kind of access right at their fingertips on their mobile phones, on their smartphones, is phenomenal. Is a huge, huge deal, you know. So these are some of the ways in which social media has been very, very instrumental in impacting real-time communication between physicians and patients. I think Heather can take the next one.
Right, and I just wanted to follow up on what Patricia said about, you know, the regulations and getting consent, and, you know, I just wanted to, you know, applaud her for mentioning that and reemphasize that, you know, one of the ways that we can be helpful here, and we'll talk about that at the end of the webinar, you know, is thinking through implementation. You know, Patricia's the content guru and genius, and knows everything about implementation from, you know, a content standpoint and a social media standpoint. And, you know, I stand in awe and just watch what she does. And, you know, I'm, you know, more the regulatory healthcare HIPAA compliance person. So, you know, don't think that you have to go it alone, and you can definitely reach out to us to think through how you can tweet and how you can use social media in a manner that's, you know, ethical and practical and is going to, you know, market you the best way that it can. And so the two of us can help you think through that. The doctor is in your inbox. Right. And this slide and these series of slides, I think, go also to the point that Patricia was making, where, you know, and I love the visual of the wrecking ball and the barriers, because I think for a lot of medical practitioners and physicians, it's daunting to think about utilizing social media, because there's a fear that there'll be HIPAA violations, and or you won't be utilizing it correctly, or you won't be able to tweet as well as Dr. Gupta or Dr. Oz. So it can be very daunting and very upsetting for physicians to wade into that area, but you really must at this point. It's no longer enough to have just your little piece of real estate. No one's going to find you, and you have to go where people are congregating. And right now, that's social media. They're online. Social media is a new way to be found and to remain relevant. And, one of the most frustrating experiences for patients, and probably also for doctors too, is access. So patients have a really difficult time getting access to their doctors, and it's practically impossible for patients to just pick up a phone and expect to speak with their doctors in order to get, support or encouragement about their health issues they're dealing with. And doctors, frankly, just do not have the kind of time to be able to do that kind of outreach. It's completely understandable. They're very busy. They have a lot of patients to see in this, in this market where it's expected that physicians will, will put together less and less and do less and less work with patients, because they, have to see, 20 patients in an hour. It's difficult for doctors as well. So even when there's a medical issue that patients have to go through, they got to go through dozens of gatekeepers, and that includes assistants and beepers and pagers and iPhones and answering services, long hold times. That's a gatekeeper right there. So unless it's an emergency, unless it's something that absolutely cannot wait, patients are often instructed to make an appointment, which more often than not is not going to be on the same day, and they have to proceed to wait to the waiting room. So a lot of patients are trying to find other ways to get the support that they need, and they're looking for communities of like-minded people with similar conditions that have similar concerns and similar worries. And these connections often take the form of support groups. These can be support groups for patients, support groups for family members, support group for friends. And often these support groups are critical to the healing process. And, it's interesting because social media actually can be a natural fit for healthcare and these support groups, because it creates a natural community where support can be extended beyond your immediate relationships and the immediate people you know. And oftentimes people who you know may not even be the best people for you to reach out to. They're just the people you know. And if you can connect to people outside of your immediate sphere, you may be able to get more help and more outreach. So that's what people are doing. They're going online. They're eliminating geographical barriers. They're going to places such as patientslikeme.com, and they're finding like-minded individuals who can help them in ways that friends and family members may want to help, but just don't have the experience and haven't gone through what the patient's going through. The plain and simple fact is that patients are using social media to search for healthcare-related information, and so as a physician and a healthcare provider, it's imperative you are in the space that they're looking. We discussed this a little bit before, but a recent survey from the healthcare research firm National Research found that 96% of nearly 23,000 consumers it surveyed use Facebook to gather information about healthcare. That's an enormous number of people. 28% were using YouTube, 22% were using Twitter. And Twitter is a personal favorite of both mine and Patricia. That's actually how we met each other. And Twitter is amazing for connecting with people and reaching out, as obviously millions of people have found out. Hospitals, healthcare providers, and private insurers also are seeing social media as a tool to engage consumers. And when doctors join these platforms to communicate with their patients, it literally breaks down both geographical, emotional, and psychological barriers. So physicians can reach out not only to their immediate patient population, but they can reach out more broadly to become the true experts in areas where they might otherwise never have the ability to reach millions of people, literally, where, in any other circumstance that they might be very localized to who they can reach and what impact they can have. Patients who have access to their doctors are able to ask questions, they can share their struggles and seek advice. And when we say patients access to their doctors, this term you could think of a little bit more globally now for people reaching out to, doctors who they may never even have seen, again, people like Dr. Oz or Sanjay Gupta, but who come into their living rooms every day and who they consider their doctors because of that relationship that has been developed through online, television, and social media. This is truly an opportunity for patients to connect with their doctors and for doctors to become true partners with patients during their journey and to help them live well. Patricia, I think it's back to you.
Fantastic. And the next point and the next benefit of social media for the relationship is really about humanizing. The slide is not cooperating with me, is just humanizing healthcare, putting on a human face to healthcare. And again, earlier on, the beginning of the webinar, we talked about the general perceptions that people have of healthcare, mostly because of the very politicized elements that have, taken away from the wonderful work that doctors are doing and hospitals are doing. They're really, really working hard to provide the kind of care that so many millions of people need, working around the clock, working all kinds of shifts. It's really amazing. But unfortunately, a lot of the coverage that we get on the media doesn't always reflect the good stuff that's happening. And so there's the perception that healthcare is in a mess and healthcare is in trouble and healthcare needs to be rescued and all kinds of things. But the truth is, we know, you and I know, patients who have had to, to deal with life-threatening issues, they know what their doctors are doing. They know the hard work that their healthcare providers are putting in to save their lives. But social media can help to really improve that perception among the masses. It can help to improve the perception. And so my one-liner here is, don't just tweet, touch someone's life. Well, how? You might ask, well, how do we do that? How do we humanize healthcare using social media? Well, here's how. If the slide will move along with me, I will tell you how. There you go. Thank you.
It's moving now.
It is not allowing me to access. There you go. The first and the second bullet points.
Okay.
And the third and the fourth. Great. Perfect. So some of the ways in which social media helps to humanize healthcare and to improve that perception among the public is that through social media, you can give patients encouragement. A lot of times, like we said, in the doctor's office, you have a very limited amount of time to converse with your patient. In that 15 minutes, really all you can do is just go through the diagnosis, go through the blood work, discuss what the treatment plan is, and that's it. There's really not much time to delve into emotional issues, is there? I know that from my own personal opinion. But here's where social media can help. The thing is, these days, being sick, like we said earlier on, has a whole bunch of hardships associated with it. And even though people understand that they have to take responsibility for their own health, there's so many things going on in their lives, whether it's a tough economy or joblessness or long work shifts or single parenting issues, all these kinds of stressful situations that put patients under a lot of pressure. And this not only poses its own unique health risks like high blood pressure, overeating, and all kinds of stress-related conditions, but it also makes it difficult for them to follow up and manage their own conditions. They'll forget to take their medication, for example. Very common. If you're working a double shift, it's very, very easy to forget to take your medication. And so with social media, it's very easy to reach out to some of your patients, tweet them using direct messaging, ask them, did you remember to take your meds? Something like that, just something simple. And and just give them encouragement. Ask them, how are you doing today? Small little pieces of, just touching their lives, just showing them that, what, I'm here to support you. And as a matter of fact, this is, by the way, I just came across it today as I was writing my blog today. Children's Hospital of Boston is actually implementing a system where they're using texting to reach out to patients the day after they're discharged. So the day after they discharge a patient,
Oh, it's
they
wonderful.
text them to see if everything's okay, they got home well, they have their meds, you have any questions that you forgot to ask while you were with us, stuff like that. So that's really something that hospitals are starting to see the value of. Another area where you can really see the human side of healthcare through social media is in email communication. And I was looking at a study recently that was published on healthaffairs.org, which indicated that email communication between physicians and patients at Kaiser Permanente led not only to the improved quality of care, but also to overall improvement of patient outcomes. Now, I'll tell you something from a very personal point of view. When my doctor emails me or text messages me, which he does, just to find out how I'm doing, just to see if my meds are working correctly, just to find out whether I'm all right, if I need anything. I tell you, I really see the person behind the white robe. It just really makes a big difference to me. Not just the white coat. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say robe, but the point is, I see a different aspect of this person who calls himself my doctor when he takes the time to send me an email or to send me a text message. And this is really important. It makes me feel encouraged, So do not, even if we're talking about social media, do not underestimate the value of email. Now, again, there are many, many factors that have to be considered when you're using email or social media platforms to communicate, because these are public platforms. But this webinar is not going to address those factors, the risk factors and the policies and the HIPAA regulations. That will be for another time, and Heather and I will certainly organize a webinar to address those issues. For now, we're just really exploring the intersection between healthcare and social media, and just to give you ideas of how social media could benefit, not hurt, your brand. And so these are some of the ways. I think Heather has some really good stories regarding the next 2 points, and I'm going to let her share those with us.
Right, absolutely. So, and again, what Patricia's talking about in terms of, enhancing the relationship, that's the point of all of us. So the focus and the point is that this should actually be something where the relationship between doctor and patient is enhanced so that there's a stronger connection between the two. And ultimately there's a greater connectivity for helping the patient and making their outcomes much better. So that's the key point. This is supposed to enhance the connection, and just to give you two stories. One is, I know of a doctor in New York who is amazing, and she's a superstar, and all of her patients really love her. And one of the things that she does is she actually contacts her patients um, after she's seen each and every one of them. So let's say if you as a patient go in and you see her, 1 in the afternoon on Tuesday, by 9 o'clock that night, you'll be getting a phone call from her, and she'll be calling to give you an update on your lab work and other tests that you had, just kind of check in to see how you're doing. So, it's wonderful that she does that, and it's unbelievable. And it's one of the things when patients think about her, they think, this is one of the reasons why I come to her. But obviously, enormously time consuming, takes a lot, out of her. She has to do this well into the night. And so one thing to think about is, incorporating social media into that so that somehow she could still give the same amazing care and outreach to her patients and still be in touch with them, but maybe be able to do it in a way that was less taxing and less, time consuming for her. So that's one example. When we think about physicians telling their story, tell their own story, there's several examples that we can think of physicians who utilize social media both to connect with their patients, but also to tell their story. And the organizations as well. AMPHS is a national organization in New York, and they do a lot of outreach in terms of health and nutrition with individuals. It's really amazing the work that they do, but they also do a great job of helping people to talk about what's going on with them, and physicians can as well. There's a physician by the name of Dr. Ed James who has a website and a blog, and he talks about his own personal story of overcoming obesity and having to realize that he was pre-diabetic and had some of his own healthcare challenges, but that through his own health and salvation, he could be a better doctor for others and really bring that message of healthcare to others. And there's lots of stories of, physicians. In fact, there's a recent study that looks at physicians who are obese and what message they send to their patients. Literally, do they have conversations with their patients about diabetes and obesities and cardiac disease? And the research shows that oftentimes there's a disconnect between the messaging that they give to their patients and their own habits, and vice versa. So it's something to think about in terms of utilizing social media for your own stories and to talk about how some of the adversities that you might have overcome as a physician can be translated to your practice and to the health and well-being of your patients. So it can be very powerful. Patricia, back to you.
Thanks, Heather. Let us conclude the webinar by talking about how you as a doctor can get started with social media. We've talked a lot about the benefits of social media, in healthcare, but now let's talk about what you can do, and we don't have
I
a
think
lot
this
of
is the
time.
highlight, Patricia. I think this is the highlight of the webinar.
Yes, this is indeed. And so if you, that's correct. If you have been wondering how to get started, if you have, looked at different, social media networks and wondered, well, where do I start? Which is the best one to start? Well, let's talk about that. Unfortunately, we won't go into too many details. Feel free to reach out to us after the webinar is over. We will give you our contact information, and if you have any questions, we can certainly discuss them in detail at that point. But what can you do to get started? You could upload, for example, one of the things you could do is to upload a YouTube video. And this is really very simple. The kind of technology that we have today, you could record and upload a YouTube video from your smartphone. It's really that easy. A lot of times people overcomplicate this. It's as simple as, now of course, if you have a flip camera and you can get better quality using them, that's great. But even on your computer, you have that webcam where you can record a video, or on your iPad. Well, what kind of video are you going to upload? Well, the most popular kind of content on YouTube is how-to content, where you record a how-to, an instructional video showing your audience how to do something. So if you're a doctor, for example, a pediatrician, for example, you deal with children, you may want to upload, very short videos. Again, on YouTube, you don't want to be too lengthy. Anything that goes over 10 minutes is certainly not going to get any clicks. You want to be very brief. 5 minutes is just way more than enough. Well, what can you say in 5 minutes? Show them how to, I don't know, take the temperature of a baby. You'll be surprised how many parents. I myself, after 4 children, just learned, I kid you not, this year, 2012, after 4 children, how to take a child's temperature the correct way. Because sometimes we're not sure, do you stick the thermometer in the mouth? Do you put it under the arm? If it's a little infant, do you stick it in their butt? I mean, which is the best way? And of course, maybe all of these are, you know, different ways to take a child's temperature, but which is the most effective? You will be so surprised how many people do not know these simple things. So think about the kind of questions that patients ask you in the exam room or when they come to your office, and use that as a starting point to create videos that answer those kinds of questions. You know, if you're a family doctor, you could even show them on video how to treat a minor burn. You know, maybe you could do a little video of you running the burn, running some cold water and then putting some ointment on it. Just, you know, something really brief but very helpful. People want to know how to do stuff. They will eat it up. This is really popular content. Another thing that you could do if you're not very comfortable in front of a camera is you could start a blog. And you know, I'm sure most of you are familiar with Mayo Clinic. They do an excellent, excellent job of blogging. In fact, they have 8 different blogs written by different user groups. Some are by researchers, some are from their patients, some are authored by doctors, some are authored by the students in their training programs. So many different users talking about, again, things that are of interest to their audience. Make sure that if you start a blog, you have your comments enabled. What does that mean? Allow people to ask you questions on your blog. Don't say, oh, I don't have time to answer questions. Trust me, if you start a blog and the whole point of your blog is to engage and to reach out to people, you certainly do not want to turn off the commenting capability. You want to be able, and besides, the readers, your readers will be really turned off if they're not able to write a comment on your blog. So be sure to turn on your comments so the patients may ask questions if they want to. Of course, Facebook we're all familiar with in one way or another. Some of you may not think much of it. Some of you might have experimented with it. But there's no question that you have seen other hospital facilities on Facebook. Very many examples. I couldn't even tell you. Cincinnati Children's Hospital, I believe University Medical, so many hospitals doing such a great job on Facebook. Go there and take a look at some of the things that they're doing. And even private physicians, and not just Dr. Oz or Dr. Sanjay Gupta, but just other regular people, regular doctors who don't have that same celebrity status. I believe her name is Dr. Rankin. I believe she has
Lisa Rankin.
Lisa Rankin, thank you. Yeah, she's an OB/GYN, and she's doing some amazing things, including writing a very revolutionary blog about breast cancer awareness. But her Facebook page, for example, is just amazing, and those are some of the places that you can go to look for cues as well. You know, so definitely take advantage of that. Again, with social media, I said it before and I'll say it again, you want to steer clear, and I'm sure you know this, but just so that you know, it goes on record that I said it, you want to steer clear of diagnosing or giving very specific medical advice. You want to just give general advice that could be applicable to anybody, not specifics. And if somebody asks a specific question, you want to steer them to contact you directly so that you can give them individual attention. Google Hangouts. Well, what are Google Hangouts? Sometime last year, towards the end of last year, Google introduced a new social media network called Google+. You might have heard about it. You may be on it, but it's pretty new. Some people, it has mixed reviews. Some people think it's absolutely great, and some people have abandoned Facebook for it. Some people couldn't care less. So it really, you have to go in there and figure out what kind of a space it is. But one of the features that Google provides is something called a Google Hangout. And basically, this is just a fun and interactive space, a video chat, a video conferencing type of thing. I mean, think of Skype, but with a maximum of 10 people. So you can see each other's faces, you can have a conversation, you're all looking at each other. but a maximum of 10 people at the most. And you can invite your patients to hang out and discuss non-confidential problems that they could be dealing with. You know, for example, if you have many patients who are dealing or caring for an elderly patient, you could invite them to a Google Hangout and discuss some of the things that they're going through. And you'll be surprised. Sometimes you may not even have to do too much talking. They themselves, amongst themselves, will talk to one another, and they'll say, hey, you know what I've been doing with my mother, this and this and the other. And the other person will say, oh, that's a great idea. I hadn't thought of that. So basically, again, you're not diagnosing, you're not giving specific medical advice. You're just inviting your patients to this very, very friendly space, very laid-back space where we can discuss the problems that we all have in common. And this proves to be so valuable when patients are going going through some of these things. They don't feel alone when they know that somebody else who is going through the same thing has a word of wisdom to share with them. So
And
think about Google Hangouts. Certainly
you know,
feel free to go in
Patricia,
there, create.
you know what, Patricia, too, that serves essentially as a virtual support group, you know, and if you have a physician that has a broad enough reach, he can invite individuals from all over the world to say, I'm having this Google Hangout, would you be interested in coming? So his reach becomes expanded, and he can help people broadly to create essentially um, a virtual space where people can support each other.
That's exactly right. But again, you have to remember that there's a maximum of 10 people. You can't. Google has not yet made a Hangout big enough to accommodate. Now, what does happen though is people can come in and leave, and somebody else can come in, and again, you know. So, but the maximum number of people in the conference chat, in the video chat, will always be 10 people. So that's something that you might want to look into. And let me move along real quick because we're running out of time. Tweet chats, we've talked about that before. We talked about the Emory Healthcare example, so I'm not going to go into that too much because we know how tweeting works, and we even talked about the operating room tweets. But let's talk about Pinterest, because this is something new. And you know, Pinterest, for those of you who are not sure what, or are not aware of Pinterest, it's another, yes, another social media network, but this is completely different. It's a place where you go in, it's like a virtual scrapbook where you pin pictures of things that you like, just pictures. There's no talking, there's no discussion, it's just pinning pictures. And you might be thinking, well, how does that help me as a doctor? You will be surprised. You will be so surprised, because it's a very visual space, and the ability to bombard the audience with marketing messages is almost non-existent. Because of that, it is drawing a huge audience. Right now, they currently have 12 million people, and this is a very young network, and it is growing at a faster pace than any other network in history. It's growing at a faster pace than Facebook, than Twitter, than LinkedIn, than Google+. It's just on fire. And you know, in the case of doctors and medical facilities, what they're doing is that they're pinning pictures of interesting things that are happening in their environments. So for example, if you had a doctor of the month day and you took pictures, you pin them in there. And if you have you know, a patient who wants to you know, who doesn't mind having their picture there as maybe the overcomer of the month or whatever it is. You know, just cool stories that can be captured through images and pinned on Pinterest. What that does is that if a person clicks on that image, it directs them back to your website. So if you put an interesting picture on Pinterest, a person who clicks on that will be directed back either to your facility's website or to your practice website, and they'll be able to find out more information about you. So do not discount it. In any case, those 12 million pairs of eyeballs that are on Pinterest are mostly young. I think they're young women who are pretty well off, you know, upper middle class, who have young children who are obviously going to need to see doctors, and they make the healthcare decisions in the family, in the household. So these are this is a very important demographic that you don't want to ignore. And then we're running out of time, but I just wanted to quickly mention LinkedIn because you're going to wonder why we're not talking about it, and it's such a big platform. And the reason why LinkedIn, and I've put it in parentheses, is because it's primarily a networking environment where you showcase your skills as a professional. And the idea with LinkedIn is to connect with peers or other people, in your group, other doctors or other, professionals. It's not likely the kind of place where you're going to have conversations with patients and consumers. It's really not that kind of place. Now, I don't even know that people actually can hold a conversation for very long. Sure, you can send those direct messages, emails, but usually what happens is once you make a connection on LinkedIn and you feel like you want to pursue this relationship, this professional relationship with the person that you've just connected with, what happens is that you then move that conversation either to email or somewhere else where you can talk more freely, or Skype. Skype has become very popular for that. So again, LinkedIn is not designed for one-to-many or many-to-many communication platform. It's really designed for a one-to-one type of communication strategy. So we have come to the end of our webinar, and if there are any questions at this point, we will take them, but feel free to put them in your chat box over there. You can write them down, and if we will have to close off the webinar, but you can go ahead and put your questions in there, and we will address them after the webinar. We will email you, and we will get in touch with you, and we'll try to address all of these questions. And really just want to thank you for being here with us. We really appreciate that you have taken your time to join us this afternoon. Again, if you have any questions and if you need help getting started with social media for your medical practice or for your healthcare facility, please feel free to reach out to either myself, Patricia Retziker, there's my information below my picture, or Heather Butts, and there is her information above her picture. And definitely reach out to us, and we'll be very happy to walk you through some of the things that we were not able to go into so much detail, and to help you with any questions that you may have. So thank you very much. And
Thank you.
That is the end of the webinar. Thank
And
you.
Patricia, I just wanted to thank you for being a wonderful co-host, and it's been a pleasure working with you on this webinar.
Thank you, Heather.
All right. Thank you, everybody.